My brother stalked and assaulted my girlfriend. At a wedding, my parents defended him. Now he's in prison for domestic violence. The second Victoria, 25F, my girlfriend walked in. Samuel instantly started behaving inappropriately, making her deeply uncomfortable with his totally inappropriate actions. He practically pushed our mom out of the way to be the first to hug Victoria, holding on way too long until she had to physically step back. Throughout dinner, he kept finding excuses to touch her arm or shoulder, telling these fake inside jokes that made no sense since they'd just met, and literally shoving past me multiple times to sit next to her until he completely crossed the line by trying to feed her from his own fork while making intense eye contact. Victoria was obviously uncomfortable but kept being polite since it was our first family gathering, and she wanted to make a good impression. The whole evening, Samuel kept bringing up embarrassing stories about me from childhood, twisting them to make me look like a pathetic fool. He told this completely fabricated story about how he had to save my high school girlfriend from my alleged emotional abuse, which never happened. Victoria knew these stories weren't true because I'd already told her about my teenage years, but my parents just sat there nodding along like Samuel was telling gospel truth. After dinner, things got even worse. Victoria offered to help clean up, trying to be helpful. I was helping my dad move some boxes in the garage when I realized I hadn't seen Victoria for a while. I found her in the kitchen with Samuel literally blocking her path to the door. He had her cornered by the sink and was telling her how she deserved someone more exciting than his boring, unstable older brother. He was standing way too close and had his hand on the counter next to her hip. Victoria had already told him to back off twice by the time I walked in. When she saw me, she looked relieved and immediately came to stand by me. Samuel just laughed it off like it was all some big joke, but I could feel Victoria trembling. My girlfriend Victoria and I have been together for 8 months, and everything was absolutely perfect, until Samuel decided to completely wreck our lives with his obsessive behavior. I guess I need to provide some background about our family dynamic for this to make sense. Samuel and I grew up in an upper-middle-class family in a small town in Minnesota. Our parents both work in real estate and make good money, but they've always been more focused on maintaining appearances than actual family relationships. Samuel was born when I was 3, and from the moment he arrived, he became the center of our parents' universe. Nothing he did was ever wrong, and somehow everything was always my fault. Growing up, Samuel showed some really concerning behavior that my parents completely ignored. When he was 6, he deliberately broke my gaming console because I wouldn't let him play when he wanted to. Instead of punishing him, my parents bought him his own and told me I should have shared better. When he was 12, he killed my pet hamster by feeding it chocolate, knowing it was toxic. But my parents said it was an accident and that I shouldn't have kept pets if I wasn't going to watch them properly. In high school, he spread rumors about me cheating on my girlfriend at the time, which caused us to break up. My parents said he was just being protective of her. This pattern has continued into our adult years. Samuel still lives at home with our parents, working at my dad's real estate office and basically doing whatever he wants. He's sabotaged every relationship I've tried to have. With my last girlfriend before Victoria, he convinced her family that I had a gambling addiction. Completely false. Before that, he told another girlfriend that I had cheated on all my previous girlfriends. Also false. Each time, my parents either defended his actions or accused me of exaggerating. When I met Victoria, I decided to do things differently. I kept our relationship completely secret from my family for the first 3 months because I wanted to protect her from Samuel's usual tactics. Victoria is honestly the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's brilliant, compassionate, and works as a pediatric nurse at our local hospital. We met in the hospital cafe where I was getting coffee while visiting a coworker who had surgery. She was on her lunch break, and we started talking about the horrible hospital coffee. After a few more coffee chats, we started dating, and everything just felt right. Victoria knows all about my family history because I wanted her to be prepared. She was actually the one who encouraged me to try introducing her to them, saying that maybe things would be different now that we're all adults. She's always trying to see the best in people, which is one of the things I love about her. I finally agreed to introduce Victoria to my family at a dinner party last month, and that's when everything started falling apart. The real problem started a few days after the dinner. Victoria began getting strange calls and texts from numbers she didn't recognize. At first, it was just heavy breathing or immediate hang-ups when she answered. Then they started leaving increasingly creepy voicemails calling her stuck up and frigid for rejecting a better option. Some messages mentioned specific details about her work schedule and what she was wearing that day, proving someone was watching her. Victoria didn't make the connection at first, but I recognized some of the voices as Samuel's old friends from high school. This group of guys who still hang around with him and basically do whatever he says because his parents give him money to throw around. When Victoria blocked those numbers, they just started calling from new ones. Then Samuel's friends began showing up at the hospital, pretending to be visitors but just hanging around the pediatric ward where Victoria works. They would stare at her for hours, making comments just loud enough for her to hear. Last week, one of them followed her to her car after her night shift. She was so scared she called me crying from her car, too afraid to drive home in case they were following her. I had to go pick her up and drive her car home while my friend followed in his car to make sure we weren't being tailed. Victoria has started having panic attacks before her shifts, and her coworkers have noticed something's wrong. Yesterday, I finally had enough proof to confront Samuel directly. I had recordings of the voicemails, screenshots of the texts, and security camera footage from the hospital showing his friends stalking Victoria. I went to our parents' house where Samuel still lives and showed him everything. He just sat there with this smug smirk on his face while I talked, then looked me dead in the eyes and said he had no idea what I was talking about. But maybe if Victoria wasn't such a stuck-up bitch, people wouldn't feel the need to teach her a lesson. Something in me snapped when he said that, and I punched him in the face. Samuel immediately started wailing like I'd tried to kill him, even though it was barely a bloody nose. Our parents came running in, and of course, they completely lost it at me, not at Samuel. They didn't even look at the evidence I was trying to show them. Mom was hysterical about her baby boy being attacked, while Dad was screaming about how I've always been jealous of Samuel and need professional help for my anger issues. When I tried to explain about the harassment, Mom actually said that Victoria must have led Samuel on at dinner and was now playing the victim because she got caught flirting with him. Dad told me to get out of his house and not come back until I've apologized to Samuel and gotten my head straight. I'm writing this from Victoria's apartment where I've been since last night. She's finally fallen asleep in the other room after crying for hours because she's terrified to go to work tomorrow. Her supervisor has been understanding so far, but Victoria's worried she'll lose her job if this keeps escalating. She loves working with the kids in the pediatric ward and shouldn't have to give that up because of my psychotic brother. I just don't know what to do anymore. Every time I think Samuel can't stoop any lower, he proves me wrong. Our parents are completely enabling his behavior and gaslighting both me and Victoria about what's happening. The police won't do anything without more concrete evidence linking Samuel directly to the harassment. Victoria is living in fear. Her job might be at risk, and my family is acting like we're the ones causing problems. Has anyone dealt with something like this? How do I protect Victoria while dealing with my toxic family? Should I be doing more to document everything that's happening? Any advice would be appreciated because I'm at my wit's end here. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading all your responses helped me realize how serious this situation really is, and Victoria and I have been trying to follow the advice many of you gave about documenting everything and taking legal action. Unfortunately, things have only gotten worse over the past 2 weeks, and I need to vent about what's been happening. We followed the advice about going to the police. Victoria and I spent hours compiling evidence, screenshots of all the threatening texts, recordings of the voicemails, and security footage from the hospital showing Samuel's friends lurking around. We also had written statements from 3 of Victoria's co-workers who witnessed the stalking behavior. The police officer we spoke to seemed concerned at first, especially about the workplace harassment, but then everything got complicated. It turns out Samuel's best friend Tyler, one of the main guys involved in harassing Victoria, is the son of a local police sergeant. When we mentioned Tyler's name, the officer's whole attitude changed. He started saying that without direct proof that Samuel was orchestrating everything, there wasn't much they could do. He suggested that maybe Victoria was misinterpreting friendly attention from guys who were just hanging around the hospital for legitimate reasons. He even had the nerve to ask if Victoria might have encouraged their attention somehow. We asked to speak to a different officer, preferably a female officer, but they gave us the runaround. Eventually, they said they would issue warnings to the people we could identify from the security footage, but that was the most they could do without concrete evidence of actual threats. It felt like a complete waste of time. My parents' reaction was even worse than I expected. The day after we went to the police, Samuel showed up at their house with a black eye, claiming I had attacked him again. I hadn't even seen him since the night I punched him 2 weeks ago, but of course, my parents immediately believed him. My mom called me crying hysterically about how I was out of control and trying to destroy Samuel's life. She said that going to the police proved I was deliberately trying to ruin his future over a silly misunderstanding. Then my dad called. He was furious. He threatened to cut me off financially, which would have been scary if I still depended on them. Thankfully, I have a good job in software development and my own apartment. He also threatened to fire me from the family real estate business, forgetting that I've never actually worked there. That's Samuel's job. It really showed how they don't even see me as my own person, just as an extension of Samuel's life. The real disaster happened last weekend. My mom kept calling and texting, saying they wanted to fix things as a family. She promised that Samuel was sorry about everything and wanted to apologize to both me and Victoria. She said they had talked to him about boundaries, and he understood he had been inappropriate. After talking it over with Victoria, we decided to give them one chance to make things right. That was a huge mistake. We arrived at my parents' house for what was supposed to be a family dinner to patch things up. As soon as we walked in, I knew something was wrong. The house was full of people, my parents, Samuel, our aunt and uncle who always take Samuel's side, and worst of all, Tyler and 2 other guys who had been stalking Victoria at work. My mom called it a family intervention. For 2 hours, they all took turns attacking Victoria's character while Samuel sat there looking smug. My mom went on this long rant about how Victoria was obviously jealous of Samuel's good looks and success, and had been flirting with him at dinner that first night. She said Victoria was making up the harassment because she felt guilty about leading Samuel on and was trying to cover her tracks. My aunt suggested that Victoria was probably used to getting attention from guys at work and had misinterpreted friendly behavior as stalking because she had a guilty conscience. Samuel played his part perfectly, acting all sad and confused about why Victoria would make up such horrible lies about him. He kept saying things like how much he had looked forward to having a sister-in-law and how hurt he was that she would try to turn me against him. Tyler and his friends backed him up, swearing they had only gone to the hospital because they were visiting Tyler's sick grandmother, who apparently moves between different floors and departments every day. The worst part was when they started questioning Victoria's mental stability. They brought up how she sometimes works night shifts, suggesting that maybe sleep deprivation was making her paranoid. They talked about how stressful it must be working with sick children, implying that maybe she was projecting her work stress onto innocent interactions with Samuel and his friends. My mom even had the audacity to recommend a therapist who could help Victoria work through her tendency to create drama. Victoria tried to defend herself at first, calmly explaining the harassment and showing them the texts and voicemails again, but they talked over her, dismissed her evidence as misunderstandings, or suggested she had somehow provoked everything. When Tyler started describing in detail what Victoria had been wearing on specific days at work, proving he had been stalking her, my parents acted like this was evidence that Victoria had been trying to attract attention. It all became too much when they invited Tyler and his friends to join us for dessert, saying they wanted to show us what nice young men they really were. Victoria started having trouble breathing and had to leave the room. When I tried to go after her, my mom grabbed my arm and said it was time for me to choose between my real family and a girl who was obviously unstable and trying to cause problems. I chose Victoria. We left immediately, and I haven't spoken to my family since that night. Samuel's friends have gotten bolder with their harassment, now spreading rumors at Victoria's workplace about her being mentally unstable and having a history of making false accusations. Her supervisor called her in for a meeting yesterday to discuss concerns about workplace drama. Even though he seemed sympathetic, he warned her that all the disruption was starting to affect her job performance and suggested she might want to consider transferring to a different department or hospital. We've hired a lawyer who is helping us pursue restraining orders, but it's a slow process. Victoria has been looking into positions at other hospitals, and one of her former colleagues has offered to help her get a job at a hospital in a city about 300 miles away. I hate that we're being forced to consider such drastic measures, but I can't stand seeing Victoria so scared and stressed all the time. She cries before every shift now, and she's lost weight because she's too anxious to eat properly. I just don't know what to do anymore. Every attempt to handle this reasonably has backfired. My family is completely delusional, the police are useless, and it feels like Samuel is winning. How do you fight back when everyone is determined to believe the worst about you and the best about your abuser? Update 2. I wish I was posting with better news, but everything has completely fallen apart after what happened at my cousin Holly's wedding last weekend. I've been trying to process everything for the past few days before writing this update. What was supposed to be a happy family celebration turned into an absolute nightmare that ended with Samuel in handcuffs and our family permanently divided. Some context first. Holly has always been the only family member besides my grandfather who saw through Samuel's act. When we were kids, she caught Samuel torturing her cat and told everyone, but my parents convinced the family that she was lying for attention. She's never forgotten that, and she's been firmly on my side through this whole situation with Victoria. She even wrote a detailed statement for our lawyer about Samuel's history of concerning behavior. When Holly sent us the wedding invitation, Victoria and I were hesitant to attend, but Holly called us personally and promised that she had only invited Samuel because her parents insisted, and that she had hired extra security specifically to watch him. She also seated us at a table with her husband's family, far away from my parents and Samuel. We thought with all the witnesses around and security present, Samuel wouldn't try anything stupid. We were wrong. The ceremony went fine, mainly because Samuel was busy being one of the groomsmen. Holly's husband is our cousin on the other side of the family and didn't know about any of the drama. At the reception, everything seemed okay at first. Samuel was sitting at the family table with our parents, and we were across the room with Holly's in-laws. Victoria was finally starting to relax and enjoy herself for the first time in weeks. Around 9 p.m., Victoria went to use the bathroom. She'd been gone maybe 10 minutes when I noticed Samuel wasn't at his table anymore. Something felt wrong, so I went to check on Victoria. As I was walking toward the bathrooms, I heard Victoria scream. I started running, and that's when Holly's husband Miller and his brother turned the corner ahead of me. They found Samuel pinning Victoria against the wall in the hallway outside the bathrooms, trying to force himself on her while she struggled. He had one hand over her mouth and the other gripping her arm so hard it left bruises. Miller and his brother pulled Samuel off Victoria just as I got there. Victoria was shaking and crying. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there were visible bruises forming on her arms. Samuel was obviously drunk and started yelling about how Victoria had been teasing him all night. She literally hadn't gone near him, and how she had followed him to the hallway. She was there first. Miller's brother, who's a cop in another city, immediately called the local police while Miller helped Victoria to a private room where Holly and her mom were trying to calm her down. Here's where everything got even worse, if that's possible. When the police arrived, my parents tried to stop them from arresting Samuel. My mom was screaming about how it was all a misunderstanding, that Victoria must have led Samuel on, that they shouldn't ruin his life over a little drunken mistake. My dad actually tried to physically prevent the officers from handcuffing Samuel, saying they needed to handle this as a family matter. Samuel switched between crying about how Victoria had seduced him and threatening everyone, saying none of us understood what he was capable of. He looked completely unhinged. When they were finally putting him in the police car, he started shouting that Victoria was a slut who had been asking for it since the first time they met. Several guests recorded the whole meltdown on their phones. The aftermath has been brutal. My parents are on a rampage, calling everyone in the family to spread their version of events. According to them, Victoria lured Samuel to a secluded area, made advances on him, then screamed assault when he rejected her. They're saying she orchestrated the whole thing to get revenge on Samuel for exposing her lies about the harassment. They're even claiming that Miller and his brother roughed Samuel up before the police arrived. They didn't. And that Victoria gave herself the bruises. The one positive development is that Holly's wedding video caught Samuel following Victoria to the bathroom on camera. Between that, the bruises, multiple witnesses, and the videos of Samuel's meltdown during the arrest, our lawyer says we have a solid case. Several relatives who were at the wedding have come forward with statements about Samuel's behavior throughout the night, including him making crude comments about Victoria and following her around the reception. My parents are now threatening to disown me if Victoria doesn't drop the charges. They've been calling and texting non-stop, alternating between guilt trips about destroying the family and threats about ruining my inheritance. They even showed up at my apartment yesterday, causing such a scene that my neighbors called the police. My mom was crying about how I was sending her baby to jail, while my dad threatened to make sure I never work in this state again. Victoria and I have made our decision. She accepted the job offer at the hospital 300 miles away, and I've arranged to work remotely for my company. We're moving at the end of next month. A lot of people might think we're running away, but we just need to get away from all this toxicity and start fresh somewhere else. Holly understands and has promised to keep us updated about any family developments we need to know about. The hardest part in all this is knowing that my family will never admit Samuel needs help. Even after watching him assault someone at a wedding in front of witnesses, they're still defending him and blaming the victim. I've wondered if anything would have been different if someone had stepped in when we were kids, but I guess we'll never know. Right now, I just need to focus on protecting Victoria and building our new life together, far away from Samuel and my parents' enabling behavior. Update 3. I wasn't planning to post another update, but something happened yesterday that I feel like I need to share. After 4 years of blessed silence from my family, I received a hysterical phone call from my mom that honestly left me feeling both vindicated and deeply sad. First, a quick update on where things stand with Victoria and me. We got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony with Holly's family and Victoria's relatives. We bought a house in our new city, and Victoria is now the head pediatric nurse at her hospital. I'm still working remotely for the same company, but got promoted to senior developer last year. We're expecting our first child, a little girl, in 3 months. Life has been peaceful and happy, which makes what I'm about to share even more disturbing. Yesterday afternoon, I was in a meeting when my phone started blowing up with calls from my mom. I usually ignore unknown numbers since my family tends to get new phones to try to contact us, but this time she left a voicemail that sounded really desperate. When I called back, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. It turns out Samuel got married last year to a woman named Rachel. None of us knew about it because we've had no contact with that side of the family since the wedding incident. Apparently, Samuel met Rachel at church, and their families arranged the marriage pretty quickly. My mom was babbling about how perfect everything was, how Samuel had finally found a good Christian woman who understood him, and how they were all so happy until last week. Last Thursday, Rachel's coworker called the police after Rachel missed 3 days of work. When officers did a welfare check, they found Rachel with severe injuries. She had 2 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and bruises all over her body. But here's the part that really got me. When the police investigated, they discovered that my dad had been helping Samuel cover up the abuse for months. Rachel finally broke down and told the police everything. Samuel had started hitting her just 2 months into their marriage. Every time she threatened to leave or tell someone, my dad would step in, using his connections in the real estate business to pressure Rachel's family about their mortgage, or threatening to get her fired from her job at one of his friend's companies. He even convinced Rachel's parents that she was mentally unstable and making up stories about Samuel, using the same tactics they used against Victoria. The final incident happened because Rachel got a promotion at work that would have given her financial independence. Samuel completely lost it and beat her so badly she couldn't go to work. When she called my dad for help, he told her to put some ice on it and remember her wedding vows. That's when her coworker got involved and called the police. Both Samuel and my dad were arrested. Samuel for domestic violence, and my dad for witness intimidation and conspiracy. Mom wanted me to come back and help deal with everything. She kept saying that family needs to stick together in times of crisis, that Samuel and Dad needed my support, and that Rachel was obviously exaggerating things just like Victoria had. I lost it. I told her exactly how I felt about her enabling Samuel's behavior for his entire life. I reminded her of what they did to Victoria, how they chose to support Samuel even after watching him assault her at Holly's wedding. I asked her if she ever once considered that if they had gotten Samuel help when he was younger, or held him accountable for his actions, maybe Rachel wouldn't be in the hospital right now. Mom broke down completely, saying she realizes now that they should have done something sooner. She admitted that she and Dad had always known Samuel had problems, but they thought they were protecting him by covering everything up. Too little, too late. I hung up and blocked her new number. Holly called me later to fill in some details she had heard from family. Apparently, Rachel's parents are devastated and feel horrible about not believing her sooner. They're fully supporting her pressing charges against both Samuel and my dad. The police are also investigating other potential victims, as several of Samuel's ex-girlfriends have come forward with similar stories of abuse and stalking. Victoria suggested we reach out to Rachel through Holly to offer support if she needs it, which we probably will. Victoria pointed out that she was lucky to have support when she dealt with Samuel, and Rachel might need someone who understands understands what she's going through. Some people might think I'm being cold toward my parents, but I've learned that enabling toxic behavior only leads to more victims. My family had countless chances to change and chose not to. Now they can deal with the consequences of their choices without my help. My job is to protect my own family now, my wife, our unborn daughter, and the peaceful life we've built far away from their toxicity. Update 4. A lot of people have been messaging me asking for an update about the situation with Samuel, my dad, and Rachel, so here's what's happened in the last 6 months. First, the good news from my side. Victoria and I welcomed our daughter Emma 3 months ago. She's perfectly healthy and absolutely beautiful. Being parents has been amazing, and it's made us even more certain that cutting contact with my toxic family was the right choice. Holly and her husband came to visit last month to meet Emma, and watching them with her just reinforced what real family love looks like. Now for the updates about Samuel and my dad's case. Holly has been keeping us informed since she's still in contact with extended family. Samuel took a plea deal last month. He's getting 8 years in prison for aggravated domestic violence, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. My dad's case is still ongoing, but his lawyers are apparently trying to negotiate a deal too. His real estate license has been suspended pending the investigation, and most of his business partners have cut ties with him. The most surprising development has been my mom. After our last phone call, she finally started therapy, according to Holly. She's moved out of the family home and filed for divorce from my dad. Last week, she sent me a 12-page letter apologizing for everything, enabling Samuel's behavior throughout his life, not protecting me when we were kids, and especially for how they treated Victoria. She acknowledged that she and Dad essentially created the monster Samuel became by never holding him accountable. I haven't responded to the letter yet. Part of me appreciates that she's finally facing reality, but it's too little too late. Where was this insight when Samuel was torturing animals as a kid? Or when he was stalking Victoria? Or when they watched him assault her at Holly's wedding? Victoria and I are discussing whether we might eventually let her have a supervised relationship with Emma, but that's years away if it happens at all. Rachel has been in contact with us through Holly. She's doing better. She's living with her sister in another state and going through intensive therapy. She's filed for divorce and is cooperating fully with the prosecutors. According to Holly, several other women have come forward about Samuel abusing them in the past, including 2 from his church. The police are investigating these cases too. Rachel's parents have been incredibly supportive since the truth came out. They've publicly apologized to her for not believing her sooner and have cut all ties with my parents. They're even working with domestic violence organizations now to help other families recognize the signs of abuse and manipulation. The extended family has basically split into 2 camps. Most younger relatives and cousins have sided with us and Rachel, while the older generation is still making excuses for Samuel and my dad. Holly's mom, my aunt, started a family therapy group for relatives who want to understand how things got so bad and how to do better for the next generation. As for me and Victoria, we're focusing on our daughter and our life here. Victoria went back to work part-time last week, and she's been promoted to director of pediatric nursing. I'm still working remotely but might start my own software consulting business soon. We've built a wonderful community here with great friends and chosen family. Sometimes I think about reaching out to my mom or responding to her letter, but then I look at Emma and think about how my parents would have expected me to let Samuel around her if we were still in contact, claiming he deserved another chance. That thought alone confirms we made the right choice in staying away. The cycle of abuse and enabling in my family ends with my generation. Emma will grow up surrounded by healthy relationships and people who respect boundaries. Sometimes cutting off toxic family is the best thing you can do for your kids, even if it hurts.